I'm planning on gluing in the motor mount right here in the back here in a second. I'm trying to plan how I'm going to approach the problem. And the problem, as I see it, is my blind nuts or claw nuts, whatever you want to call them. So what I've done here, I've put some little short M3 screws through them. Not ones that would go all the way through, because I don't want the threads coming out the back and then locking up in the Gorilla Glue. Yeah, I want to play with Gorilla Glue some more. But you see, they're just kind of flush. And I'm going to pack them up with Vaseline jelly. Brain still ain't right. Then I'm going to apply the Gorilla Glue to this portion, avoiding the claw nuts if I can. And then I'm going to spray the, oops, I'm working on better focusing nowadays. Not doing too good yet, but I'm working on it. Wet that part and then press this in, and then hopefully when the glue starts foaming and expanding, it might stay away from these thread areas. And if I get to it after it's tacky enough to stay, I might be able to get them screws out of there real quick, like in 30 minutes after I do it. That's my thinking. I'm not sure how that's going to work out in practice. Let's see what we can do with that. As they say, the best laid plans of mice and men. I already changed my mind. Why? Because I packed this one up, this one up right here with Vaseline. Probably would have cleaned it up a little. And I just touched the second one to do the Vaseline, and I went, wait a minute. That's going to be pressed between the foam and this mount. And then that Vaseline will be in there forever. Boy, on a hot day, it'll just start running and the screw will get loose easily. You know, I'm trying to figure this out all on my own. So I think I'm just going to put the screws in there, try to not get real near those claw nuts with the Gorilla Glue, and do it that way. Again, we're all going to see how this comes out. Okay, I applied Gorilla Glue to this outside edge, and of course some of it came in. So then I took a paper towel and wiped right down through here to try to get as much of that back out of there as I could without getting it out of the dead corner and that outside edge with Gorilla Glue. Don't think you can see it in this light. Don't think it'll help much if I turn the camera light on. Boy, no, that didn't help at all. Ouch. But there is a little on that very outside edge. I'm going to spritz that. And I applied glue on the motor mount from the center wheel out, leaving, you can see where the wood on the outside edge of the motor mount past the claw nuts. It doesn't actually have any on them, but the rest of it does. And the outside edge doesn't have any on it at all, so I can touch it without getting it everywhere. That's why I put it on that inside edge. So now I'm just going to spritz it with water from that spray bottle down there. Right there. And press it in. Let's see what happens. Watch the whole thing blow up in my hand. One little spritz, two little spritz. Don't have any gloves on. Don't know if I should give that time to activate a little bit before I push it in there or not. I didn't, because I didn't want it to start foaming right away. So is that about straight up? Looks like it to me. Push it all the way in. Wants to rock back and forth. Yeah, these two fuselage halves didn't come out exactly even. As you can see right there, that's where it kind of grabbed and I couldn't move it anymore. So I guess there's a little bit of lateral rock in this because of that. So I'm going to leave it there. Then I'm going to test it after the fact and see if I like the hold on it. I think if foam develops in the center, I can get that out easy. I'm only worried about the back side of my screws. Yeah, that rocks back and forth pretty badly. Oh well. So, need to just leave it alone, let it do its thing. Don't think that's enough glue or water in there to make it foam enough to push away. Just see if I can't find some kind of clamp. Okay, I put a little piece of crafter's plywood on the foam here. A big clamp. Quite a lot of overkill in my humble opinion. And it wouldn't quite center in the back, but that's better than me trying to stand here and hold it. I'm going to go ahead and tell you the truth. I'm going to take those screws out right now and hope that if any foam comes up in those holes, that when I put the actual screws through and they need to be outboard a little bit, there won't be foam stopping that. I'm still learning this glue. I like the way it holds once it gets done, but I'm green to it. I'm learning. So now I'm going to start sanding all my joints. I've been working on this one a little bit. Oops, getting kind of a groove right there. Better watch it. Just a little excess right there. Slight bit right there. Some little stuff back here that'll probably almost just tear off. That's all pretty good because I cut out my belly pan for the bottom, and I need to get that area roughed up and prepared for, I guess it'll be Gorilla Glue again. I'm a little gun shy of Gorilla Glue after that first little bit yesterday, putting all that water in that container in it and letting it set for a few minutes before I put it on. That really made me a little gun shy. I'm not sure about how much I can move it around after it touches, so although that belly pan is nice and snug everywhere, if I touch it in the wrong place with glue on it, I'm just afraid it'll be there forever. Like I say, I've got just a little front to back difference in the two fuselage halves, which you've seen just gave me a little trouble on the motor mount. I didn't think it was going to be that noticeable, but I could not move these two halves yesterday after I put that glue in the way I did. Such be life. I'm going to start working on the inside seams too. See, I've got a lot of foam came out right in this area. I mean, I've got a really thick bunch in there to get out somehow. I'm afraid if I just straight pull on it, of course I'll be pulling it out of the joint too, so I'm going to sand it or cut it there. There's the best view of it. And see, the problem is that is in the way of putting in. It's not too bad. From the front right here, see there's another glob right there, if you can see it. From front right here to right about right there, there's kind of glob. As you go on back, right there's just a little bit too, a little bigger there, less, a little big piece there. And then as you go on back towards the back, till you get to the very back where the battery plate tray, whatever you want to call it, isn't going to be glued down, is fairly okay. But I've got to glue the battery tray in it. So while the motor mount's curing up, I'm going to be working on these joints here so I can glue the battery tray in the bottom. And I'm learning about my Gorilla Glue. This is a little container. I use these for storing parts in and stuff. They're real cheap. They're food containers in actuality. I wanted to get a little glue on an acid brush to put in that motor mount, so I put it in this container, but I didn't need much, so I just used that bottom corner. You see where it is? And see, now I'm starting to learn more and more. Come on, here we go. Oops. No, that didn't help at all. I guess it picks up a aperture. Working on it. Now, I'm learning more and more about this glue, because evidently that glue right there in the corner that I used to get it on the brush is taking moisture out of the air and starting to foam on its own. Oh boy, there's a better way to look at it. So I touched it with a X-Acto knife, and it's got a skin on it. It's pretty tough. It hadn't been 5 minutes. So this stuff will actually harden just by using it without water at all. I guess out of the moisture in the air. It's just my opinion. I haven't heard that, I haven't read that. I think the moisture out of the air is doing that right there. So now I'm even more worried about how much time I have to align parts after I touch them together. But I'm learning more. I enjoy it. I'm learning more. Hey, this is going to be hard to see. Shouldn't even try it this way. Let's see what I can do. The M2 threaded rods came today, and if I can get this in focus. There we go. I think, whoops. There we go. Whoa. You can sort of see it's a threaded rod. Let's back off of that before we go cross-eyed. And I've got the little ends, of course, I already had to go on the ends of them for the servo linkage. Actually, they come like this, the little arm ends do. So I can cut my rod to whatever length I want, put one of these servo ends on each end, and I have a much better setup than came with the model, in my humble opinion. This is what came with the model, and you know I'm not a big fan of these. The little part for the end of it was a little different with the Skyhunter than it was the Mini Talon. You know, I didn't like the Mini Talon at all, because this one has one of those screws that has the little nylon in the end of it to capture it, and that could help you from tightening the nut all the way down like the Mini Talon problem was. So that's why I chose that solution, and I chose one where I probably will use those M2 rods and end caps exclusively in the future, because it's just so easy to set them up length that I want, and done, and I can forget about them forever in life. They roll. They're less binding than anything else. Notice a lot of the new models are coming with those types of connections now. So there's the little piece I made up for the servo on the horizontal stabilizer on the Skyhunter. I made it a little long, so if I have to cut it, I can cut it. It's hard to lengthen them. Easy to cut them. Okay, that's what I came up with, and I like it. Those bolts and nuts are tightened down tight. I'll put Loctite on them later, but because this is in a ball, it's free as a bird. And that servo's actually in neutral right now, and I got a pretty good neutral on it, and it also works. I've got a servo tester on it right now too. It works. Oops, trying to find my button. That's neutral, and there's it working its way through its throws. So that's that. I think that's the way I'm going to do most of my linkages from now on. I just like that. I think it's rock solid, least amount of resistance as possible. And I will put some shrink tubing over them at the end. Actually, I looked at that a little deeper, and there's going to be no need whatsoever for any shrink tubing on these like I put on my others. It's just, I will put maybe even red instead of blue Loctite on those 2 bolts. This is 100% complete. Well, I needed to make the holes in the control horns just a little bigger to get those linkages through. I don't know if you can see it, that second one down. And luckily I have this little hand jeweler's drill, and you can see right now I've got it through the second hole in that one. Just little twists, made it large enough for those the ends on the linkages to go through. And luckily I did have a little set of very small jeweler's drills to go with that hand drill, and that let me finish up. So I decided to do the rest of the control horns in the kit with it off the platform, because it wasn't a whole lot of fun to try to do those 2 on the rear stabilizer while it was all glued up. Should have thought of this up front. Well, I was thinking of it up front. That's why I had those parts, but now I'm got it more together. Now I'm going to epoxy these carbon fiber rods. There's 4 of them into the wing. 3 on one side and a 4th on the top side. I'm just going to use epoxy on these. I don't see any reason not to. I'm just going to make up a bunch of epoxy, smear it on the rods, and then push the rods down into place and maybe smear some over the top. Try not to get too much excess around. And actually, that'll make me, well, I'm not going to put the servo in until I get the electronics that I'm going to mount in these wings mounted. That way this won't have, the aileron here won't have to be cut free. It's not completely cut as it comes. You have to cut each end free to actually make it an aileron. I'm just going to leave that like that so that doesn't get in my way when I'm mounting a RC receiver or telemetry radio, compass, GPS, whatever I think that I will end up mounting in it. I just think with that stuff in there and this cut, just be extra problems. I can put the carbon fiber rods in right now and it shouldn't be any extra problem. My foam down the wing is still easy to get in, easy to get out. Putting the spar component in there yesterday did not. Look at that second side with the Gorilla Glue. See any foam coming out of it? Yeah, how about that? The kid did get better as the day went on yesterday. If you remember, that other one isn't quite this pristine. So that foam will go back in that slot real easily. This is the non-pristine one, the one I had to pull up at one point. I must have rolled it also when I lifted it up. And then we have Gorilla Glue that foams so much. That was when I just sprayed it down. That was my first one. No, that was the second one. The fuselage was the first one. That's the worst. Got a little excess out there, but you can see the second one I did was much better in my humble opinion. So in one of these channels I have to put the servo wires for the rear stabilizer, the elevator in the back, and also that comes through the boom. Remember, comes out a slot. You get to choose which side. They're both slotted so that you can choose either side for that wire to come through. And then of course the servo wire will have to come through this. And also any wires for anything that I mount in the wing. So after putting these carbon fiber rods in, that's all I will be doing on these until after the electronics is mounted. Then I'll know how my wire runs go, etc. And the servo linkages, ailerons cut, won't get in my way while I'm doing it. So I guess this is about it for tonight after I epoxy these carbon fiber rods into both wings. I saw a couple of other things while I was doing the carbon fiber rods in the wing. I've just done one of them at this point. And I think if I can put it in the glare, you can see I covered the rod in epoxy, put it in, and I took epoxy on my finger, ran it down the groove, actually pretty thick, and then I went back with an isopropyl alcohol soaked paper towel and just rubbed right gently to within like a 1/16 of an inch of the rod, which you can see on one side wasn't a good 1/16 inch. It was better on the side nearest the aileron. But that's setting up, and that rod's completely down in that slot, so that should work great. Notice this right here. I guess I didn't get that pod completely closed when I epoxied it. Could be a little bit of the problem. Well, I thought it could be a little bit of the problem with my droopy tail. But then I looked and noticed that the coupler is as far down in the bottom wing as it could possibly go. It's just the top cap isn't down all the way, is on the other wing. But it doesn't go, it isn't up much in the back, and it's just like up in the back. This isn't up, this is. And believe me, that sucker is epoxied. That will never come off of there. Ever, never, never, never. And I decided while I was doing the carbon fiber rods in the wings, these little plastic pieces are just reinforcement for the foam. They go right in these holes. I'll go ahead and epoxy them in while I'm doing the rods in the wing. That's just reinforcement where the screws mount the wing to the fuselage. Little plastic comes all the way through. They just have to be affixed in there. No big deal on that. The bolt and nut will keep those captured, but just enough to so they don't come out, don't fall out, etc. And those be fine. Again, that's not a critical part. So I'm going to put the top carbon fiber in the other wing. Let these cure for a while, and then I'll put the 3 in the bottom. I've got the wings set aside, letting the top 3 epoxy places get a little cure on them right now. I took the clamp off, put the screws back through. Boy, that seems to be in there good. Now, I'm not going to torque on that real hard tonight. There again, you can see the little bitty difference in the 2 sides of the fuselage that I created. I tightened these screws all the way down in the holes so they poked out the other side. Then I pulled them back out, looked at them, see if there was any Gorilla Glue on them. There doesn't seem to be. Now, there is some Gorilla Glue foam that appeared in the center hole in, 2 places, I believe. That'll be easy to dig out later from that center hole. Just put a reamer in there. Same way I made it bigger for the motor. So you know me. I just had to go ahead and bolt it on to see what it was going to look like. So that's a 12/8 prop. Sharp as a knife. Shaped like a knife. I like the aeronaut folding props. But darn, are they ever vicious. And it is going to stick about, shikes, it's going to stick down about 3 inches below the fuselage. Oh, man. My poor hands and arms. I'm concerned. But guess I'll put the other carbon fiber rods in the wings and be done for the night. So there's all the carbon fiber rods epoxied into the wings. 3 on the bottom side, which I just finished, and 1 on the other. Everything else is setting up, curing, I guess it is. And that's it for the night. Kind of a easy night. Thank you.